Hello everyone and welcome to another virtual session of Global Bar Week, this time focusing on financial wellness. Financial decisions, or the lack thereof, can be a point of uncertainty, instability, and stress for many hospitality professionals. As our industry spotlights more issues concerning mental and physical wellness, financial wellness still can seem like an overwhelming or even taboo subject. In an unconventional industry, it can be difficult to navigate or even make a 5-year financial plan. Often, bartenders, ambassadors, and consultants do not have tools readily available necessary to strategize their personal financial wellness. This seminar will be a practical exploration of decision-making concerning your financial independence and demystifying some of the more intimidating pillars of financial planning. I can't wait to hear what our two awesome speakers have to share with us today, especially since this topic is more relevant than ever, considering the uncertain times we live in right now. So, without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker, Emily Arseneau. Emily is a New York City-based director for Collectif 1806, Remy Contra's USA's flagship bartender engagement program. Emily has consulted on concepts and menus across the United States and has been a guest on streaming platforms for Bustle, Refinery 29, and more as a cocktail expert. She has hosted cocktail and masterclasses across the United States, the Caribbean, and China. Currently, her career focuses on people management and the development and recommendation of incredible brands. Emily is accompanied by Joseph Ferguson today. Joseph graduated from Southern Methodist University in 2007 and has been representing Northwestern Mutual since then. He lives in Southlake, Texas with his wife and thinks providing financial security for your family is one of the most important things in life. As a certified financial planner, he is committed to expanding his knowledge and expertise in the estate, financial, and investment planning process. His designations and certifications reflect his continued investment in serving his clients' needs. That being said, Emily and Joseph, take it away.
Thanks, Kate. It's always funny hearing a bio that you wrote about yourself, have someone else read it. It's bizarre, but thanks for having us. I'm super excited. My name is Emily Arseneau, as you said. I work with Remy Cointreau and manage our bartender engagement program. I myself was once a bartender for many moons, and it changed my life. It was an amazing career, led me to where I am today. And led me to people like Joseph to try to help me get my act together. I didn't always have the tools readily available for financial planning. I became interested in it much later on when I purchased my first home, and I had so many questions. There was so much misinformation out there. I wasn't really sure where to start, and I think I started thinking about financial wellness when our industry was really thinking a lot about mental wellness and physical wellness and taking care of your body, since we work so hard behind the bar, and it can be such a mentally taxing environment as well. But a huge source of stress is financial issues, and so I think we need to take care of ourselves in that way too. So I'm here to be the industry lens, but obviously we needed a real life expert. So we have Mr. Joseph Ferguson, who will accompany me on this discussion.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Joseph Ferguson, as she said, and I'm a certified financial planner. I've ran a financial planning practice since 2007, and the focus of my team's practice is working with individuals and business owners and helping them create comprehensive and fully integrated financial plans, which is just a fancy way of saying a plan that's personalized and tailored to each individual, because everyone's situation will be different. Even two bartenders or two business executives and different goals. And so we always want to make sure we understand what that individual wants to accomplish, and we can help create some concrete and actual items so you get to the place you want to be. I think today we're going to talk some general rules of thumb and some financial basics as a starting point. But when to get into details, you have to sit down with an individual professional, someone you trust. I recommend you find somebody that is a certified financial planner, because that shows their expertise and their knowledge of the industry, as well as their commitment to making sure they're able to serve their clients as best they can. And so I think Emily's gonna start off with a few things, and then we'll kind of jump back and forth as we go through it.
Yeah, we were thinking, obviously this format is totally different than how we would normally interact with everyone watching. So I've compiled a lot of questions from real life bartenders in the US at least, that I will be asking you, Joe. But just for everyone watching, it's pretty much going to be a fundamentals, like a financial planning fundamentals, and then we'll kind of infuse some industry specific questions, mostly as it pertains to saving, spending, and growing. So Joe, can you kind of take me through the 5 key actions that you would identify as like the pillars of financial security and that journey?
Yeah, so the 5 key actions we talked about are saving, spending, growing, protecting, and then giving. But to even further simplify it, I think we always start with 2 basic sides of financial planning, and that's the defensive side and the offensive side of planning. On the defensive side of planning, we talk about making sure that you're able to build emergency fund savings up. You want to have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses saved up, because as we all know, something will always happen, whether it be the global pandemic we're living in now, or emergency from family, travels, weddings, whatever it may be. And you always want to make sure you have access to cash. You're not having to go into run up credit card debt. And the rule is 3 months of living expenses for a 2-income household, 6 months of living expenses for a single income earner. And then also on the defensive side, we talk about making sure you have health insurance in place, making sure you're able to protect your income, and also reduce debt, because the short-term interest-bearing debt is what really gets people into a lot of trouble. Once you're paying a credit card debt that's 20-30% every month, it's hard to ever come out from underneath that. And so we'll talk about some strategies and some basic habits that'll help you get to a better place. And then on the offensive side, we talk about growing your wealth, whatever future goals you may have, whether it be retirement, your kids' education, purchasing a home, and some efficient ways of doing it, and some systems to put in place to make sure you do it all the time. Because when it comes to savings in general, most people are naturally bad savers.
Yeah.
Myself included. And so if you didn't have a system in place, it's really difficult, because the typical approach is I'm gonna save whatever's left over. But usually we find a way to spend most of that and there's not enough left over. And so that's why you always want to make sure you pay yourself first, and then you have the freedom to spend, and you don't have the anxiety and burden of, should I be doing this? Can I afford this? Which because it's baked into the budget already. And so when we talk about paying yourself first and having that budget, that's where it begins, is that budget. To know.
Well, what is like a reference point for, if I'm a bartender, how much should I be, what's my benchmark for how much I should be saving every month?
You should be trying to save 20% of your income every single month, and make it automatic. And it's difficult as a bartender because it fluctuates up and down. But a simple way of doing it is just every time you come home, you put 20% away into savings and see if you can get there. And if you can't start with 20%, you got to start somewhere. And one thing that has kind of been proven through this pandemic is that a lot more people are able to save more than they think they can, because the savings rate for the US typically, I think in 2019, it was 7.6%. But after the pandemic hit in April alone, it was 33%, the savings rate for Americans. And so that shows when there's pressure added to you, you kind of bear down and save because you're uncertain about what's coming in the future. And so as much as we can make it systematized and be disciplined about, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I feel like this experience has really taught everyone I know, at least, like you can live with a lot less than you think you can. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's
that's
been
the
a
truth.
lot of pasta.
Yeah.
Um,
One thing that I'd recommend, something I did years ago is for a whole month, my wife and I, every time we came home, we wrote down every single thing we spent, and we wrote it down to hold each other accountable and ourselves accountable, because there's a bunch of things to track it on your phone. It's really simple, but you don't have that accountability of having to own up to yourself and or your significant other or both every single day on every coffee you bought, every drink you bought, food, lunch, whatever it may be, and add it up. And it's eye opening to say, listen, I could cut a lot of this stuff out and still have a great life and be able to save more to get to the place that I want to be.
yeah. But you're saying, okay, so 20% is the benchmark, and really our best bet is to not rely on human nature and just go automated.
Yeah.
Okay. Consistency, automated, pay yourself first. I mean, I feel like any business owner, if there's any business owners watching, like would want to pay themselves first too. So I guess your life is your business, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything else, like, I mean, saving wise, I think the main concern on our end, like from a hospitality perspective, is most people in this industry don't have access to a 401k. So we can talk more about that when we get to like growing, but I know that that's a main concern as far as savings is concerned as well. But yeah, is there anything else you wanted to touch on as fundamentals of like saving habits and philosophies?
I mean, I think the most important thing is to make it automatic, and have a budget that you go by. Because if you don't start with the budget, you don't really know where your money's going.
Yeah.
And so when you start with the budget, you break down everything you have to pay every month. And I always thought, I call it hard, fast bills. The bills you have to pay every single month, otherwise you don't have a place to live or a car to drive. And once you have that number, you know what your absolute bottom line is. And so you take the money you're bringing home, you take out the bills you have to pay, and then from there you set money aside for savings, and then whatever's left over you have for your discretionary spending. Because I mean, you could try and save every single penny you have above that number, but you do it for a month, maybe two.
Yeah.
Like, this is terrible. I can't even like have fun and like go and like meet a friend for coffee.
Yeah.
And so
Or
we just scrap it. Yeah. Or margarita or whatever you eat. And so I always say something that's meaningful but doable. And it's just like working out. You can't,
I was gonna say, yeah.
yeah, you can't come in day one and say, I'm gonna run 50 miles if you've never run before. But then again, you don't want to come in day one and say, listen, I'm gonna take 3 steps and just leave it at that, because that's not moving the needle to where you want to be.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, so you're talking about budgeting. So that does kind of bring us into spending, because that's inevitable. So what do you think is the best way to track expenses in the first place? Like, is there a template, or like, what's your advice on that?
I mean,
Are you analog and you're like, I write that down? Like,
you said?
I said, are you super analog and you just got to write it down, or what?
No, I don't. I think that's a good exercise to do for a month or two, is to write everything down, because then it's a little bit more eye-opening on what's actually being spent. And then, I mean, there's a ton of apps out there that can track all of your spending. There's no one that's the absolute best, in my opinion. It just kind of depends on what you like. And then that way you can always see the trends from a month-to-month basis on what's going on from your spending habits.
I was using that app Mint for a while, and that was pretty good, except it's kind of buggy. It like kicks you off sometimes, but but it was laid out pretty all right. Okay, cool. So what other spending highlights do you want to make sure that or guidelines we keep in mind?
I mean, I think the one rule of thumb is the 20-60-20. So you want to save 20% income, 60% should be dedicated to the household expenses, and then you have 20% to grow to discretionary spending and to give.
Okay. Is the 20 savings, does that include any kind of like investing, or is that different?
I mean, it includes the investing side as well.
Okay.
And there's different breakdown, but I mean, the first thing you want to do is make sure you get to the point where you have 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in savings. And then after you get there, then you can move on to the investing side, where you look at investing for retirement. And a lot of people, like you mentioned, in the industry don't have a 401k. And so there's alternatives to a 401k. The main ones that most people utilize are a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA, to be able to save and have money compound for the future. And one of the most
What's the difference?
Okay, the difference is, so a Roth IRA, you put after-tax dollars in, it grows without tax, then it comes out without tax.
Gotcha.
But you don't get a deduction for it when you put it in, because you already paid tax on that money. A traditional IRA, you put pre-tax dollars in, so you get to deduct it from your income, and then it grows without taxes, but then when it comes out, it's taxed as ordinary income, like the money you make today.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I hear that. Okay. Cool. All right. So I mean, I guess if that's so we're already kind of in like the growing aspect. If there's saving, there's spending, and then growing is more like what, like investment basics, right? And so that would be the saving for retirement, which I think is on the forefront of a lot of bartender, hospitality, server. It's on all of our minds because not everybody has a company matching 401k. So, okay, so Roth IRA, and then what are some like fundamentals of investing? Because it does seem a little overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it's almost criminal that we learned none of this in school. I think of all the classes I've taken in high school and college, and there was not a single one on personal finance or credit, which are two the biggest things that have impact for the rest of your life. Some of the basics of investing, I would say, I mean, I always start with the truths of the market. And not to get too technical, but I mean, we know the market is cyclical, meaning different sectors perform better at different times. So in order to reduce risk, we have to diversify. And that means not have all your eggs in one basket. And then one step further past diversification is asset allocation. And that means having different types of baskets. And then after that, you want to make sure that you're able to rebalance to the proper asset allocation, because we know if the market's cyclical, some sectors will get bigger, others will get smaller. You want to rebalance. And then the last one is make sure that you dollar cost average. And that means put the same amount of money in the market on a systematic basis. That way, when the market's up, you're buying fewer shares. When the market's down, you're buying more shares. And then you're able to have the money compound over time. And the biggest factor in your investment performance is going to lie in asset allocation. And so that's what our team focuses on, is asset allocation. And then we know that the time horizon is vitally important as well, because compound interest is what's you're going to be able to take advantage of. But the biggest factor in compound interest is your time horizon, meaning how long you've been doing it. And so the earlier you start, the better it is. I mean, Einstein said the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest.
Yeah.
But the key is you want to make sure it's working for you and not against you. The way it works against you is when you have the credit card debt, where interest is compounding and it seems almost never ending, and you're unable to get out from underneath it.
Okay. All right. So I guess you were saying, I think you kind of broke it down to me as like goal setting, risk management, diversification, discipline, and momentum. And momentum would be the compounding.
Yeah, and just the habit of doing it. Because I mean, you got to start with the goals on what do you want to accomplish and where you and how to get there. I recommend sitting down with a professional. You can do it on your own. But one of the things that I thought was a good analogy, most of us usually don't make really good decisions when we're by ourselves in the dark. And so one of the big mistakes people make in investing is trying to time the market.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not the right time to get in. Oh, I'm gonna get in now. Or it's the market's up, so they want to get in, which is the worst time to get in, because things have just gone up in value and cost. And we know that things work towards their average over time. And so human nature induces us to invest at the wrong time and get out the wrong time because the market drops and people are like, oh no, I want to get out. But you're just selling something that's just lost a lot of its value instead of trying to buy when the market drops. Because if you're looking to buy anything else, most people look for one word, and that's sale. If it's on sale, it's a good time to buy it. But for some reason, the way the human nature is, we say, oh, the market's down, I don't want to get in now. And so that's one of the mistakes a lot of people make.
If people feel like that they maybe aren't in a place financially where they can afford to work with a professional certified financial advisor or planner, are there like passive options to at least get them started while they work towards that?
Yeah, there's a lot of passive options out there. Anything from just a basic mutual fund that you can start putting in some money, whether it be $100 a month, $50 a month, something to start and have the money compound. You always want to make sure that it is has a low expense ratio, and there's been proven managers that have been there for a while with their tenure and their experience, and you see the performances being good. That's some basics that you should look at when you're trying to pick a fund to be in. And some people just do a simple ETF, which is an exchange traded fund, and that's super passive, really low expenses, and you just dump the money in, and so you're doing something and having to grow as a starting point.
And that's like, there's like apps that do that and stuff, right?
Yeah,
And so,
there's a bunch of apps out there. I was thinking, I mean, a lot of you can meet with an advisor for free to see if you like it, because most advisors out there don't charge just for a meeting, because if you meet and you guys don't click, then it's not a good fit.
yeah.
And there's people on my team that can sit down with virtually anyone to help them start creating a plan.
Okay. All right. I think something else that's like on our minds a lot, like hospitality industry wise, is the ability to protect, like say I'm finally mastering, I'm a good saver, I'm spending responsibly, I have interest working in my favor, and then I break my leg and I can't work. How do we protect the money, if we get hurt? Because a lot of us don't have access to health insurance. So I guess that's a two-parter. How can we protect the money that we have worked really hard for, and how can we, what are options for health?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the biggest foundations of financial planning is protect your income, because like you said, if we create this great plan for an individual and they're working and all of a sudden they can't work, the whole plan blows up, no matter who you are. And so we always start making sure you protect your income, because that's your biggest asset, is your ability to generate income. And it's not your house, it's not your car. Is and will
all up
always
here.
be. Yeah. Yeah. So if you're able to earn income, you can get out of a lot of situations. If you're not, that puts you in a tight spot. And so you can get disability insurance just to protect your income. So if something goes wrong, that you have an income coming in to be able to weather the storm. When it comes to individual health insurance, that's not my area of expertise, but there's a lot of people out there that can help you do that. And I have people that we can introduce people to, depending on what area of the country they're in, just because every state is a little bit different in how things are set up.
Gotcha. And you were telling me when we were talking before, like if say someone got hurt and compiled a lot of medical bills, you were saying like priority wise, the credit card bills should take priority because it's so much more interest than a medical bill, correct?
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to reducing debt, you always want to look at the highest interest bearing debt first to get rid of, because that's the one that's going to make it more difficult to ever get out. And then you can, as you knock those down, and most hospitals and medical facilities will work with you on some sort of payment plan that's pretty flexible, because they know that if you just don't pay it, then they eventually have to send it to collections, and then they may never get their money. And so most people are willing to work with people with reducing their medical bills, but I would say focus on the credit card bills if you have those first before that.
Would you say that the same kind of goes for student loans? That, I mean, it depends on the loan, obviously, but
yeah, it depends on the interest rate, and there are companies out there that can, I'm drawing a blank now, that can consolidate your student loans and help and reduce your interest rate. Because interest rates are so low right now that this would be a good time to look at consolidating some of those student loans if the interest rates are high, so you can put them in a place where they're easier to compile and knock down. And then one of the basics to get rid of some of the credit card debt is a lot of times there'll be, you can do a balance transfer to an interest-free card for 12 months or 18 months. And so that way you have a time period where it's not accumulating all this interest, and you're able to start knocking it down little by little. And if you can, the best way to do it is just set it up. So whatever the amount is, call it $10,000, and you have 12 months to pay it off. You divide that out, and that's the amount you pay every single month. And that way you save a ton of money over interest over the years versus having that 20% interest compound over and over again until you pay it down, it goes up, pay it down, it goes up, and you feel like you can't get out from underneath it.
Okay. All right. So I didn't know that you could like refinance old debt. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, very clear. The last pillar is giving, which I think is one of the most important, because especially if you're a hospitality, it's like, you know, we're in this industry because we do like taking care of people, and we do like making people happy and comfortable and giving back. So I think maybe a misconception is that you can only do any kind of like charitable contributions or do any kind of giving if you are wealthy, but it's not true, right? I mean,
no. Anybody can give even a little amount, and I think it's important that we're always giving, because it all comes back to us in some shape, form, or fashion. And as we're able to give and make an impact for others, it helps the world, and we're all be in a better place because of it.
Yeah, I don't remember. I have a colleague that always used to say, like, you know, whatever you put out in the world, you get back like 10 times more.
Yeah.
So
I have a good friend of mine, and he has a foundation called "What You Give Will Grow."
mm-hmm.
And so I think that's important. So to make sure we're growing other things and giving.
Well, I don't think that would be a hard ask for people that give so much of themselves to their customers and clients every single day. Like that's how hospitality people are. So that one will resonate. Okay, cool. So I have some real life questions that I'd like to ask you. We've touched on a couple of them already, but I think there's the themes from what I was seeing of people sending me questions were worried about health insurance, which is a honestly different topic, worried about retirement, which we recommended Roth or traditional IRA is a great option to investigate if you don't have access to a 401k or employer matching. But is there other like reliable resources that you would recommend to maybe like be more educated about retirement or investment basics?
I mean, I always default to making sure you have a professional that you can work with and have a personalized plan, because there's a lot of information out there, and especially in today's world, not everybody is giving you the straightforward truth, especially when you go on the internet, because who knows who really wrote it and what their intentions were behind it. But having a personalized plan that's catered to you is the best way of approaching it. And obviously, if you work with an advisor, you want an advisor that's going to be willing to educate you, because like I said before, this is stuff we never learned in school. And so there is a learning curve for most individuals we work with, just to make sure they're comfortable and they feel like they have enough information to make the best decisions for themselves. And so, I mean, and then there's some basic books. I can compile a list and put them out there that could be helpful just as a starting point for a lot of people.
Sweet. If anyone's up for some dry fiduciary responsibility reading. Or a big glass of wine and just tear into it. Like, Well, so one thing we didn't really talk about, but I know people are thinking about is credit. And like, where do you, so I actually didn't, I was late to the credit game. So what's a good place to start? How do I even start building credit? Why is it so important? And maybe some like the best ways to best practices.
Yeah, so I mean, credit is vitally important just because it proves that you can pay your bills and you're willing to actually pay them on time. And so your credit score allows you to get lower interest rates when you're looking to purchase a home or a new vehicle, whatever it may be. And I am not a firm believer in keeping, some people say you should keep some money on your credit that you're paying. If you're paying it every single month, you're not paying interest. And that's, I think, is the best way to do it. And so you get a credit card and you essentially treat it like a debit card, where you only put things on there that you know you're going to pay off every single month. And you actually get points for doing it. And you get points and you get free stuff, either airlines or whatever, cash back. But it's important that you treat it like a debit card and not just rack a bunch of things up in your credit card and then struggle to pay them off unless you absolutely have to. That could be in case of an emergency, but that way it proves that you're paying on time consistently and it boosts your credit score. So when you're getting ready to purchase a home, you'll get a lower interest rate.
Okay. Okay. So speaking of home buying, if someone is in, a position where maybe they're not making a salary or a paycheck and you're living mostly on tips or something like that, what steps, how do you need to set yourself up if your ultimate goal is like you do want to purchase a home or you do want to get a loan for starting your own business or something like that? What should lead up to that moment before you go to the bank?
I would look at it starts with your tax returns because if we're going to be honest, I would assume that most people don't report every single penny they make in tips. And so I'm not
no comment.
I'm just saying, let's look at the facts of the matter. And so whatever you're reporting to the IRS every year, that's what the bank's going to look at to see what kind of home you're qualified for. Because if you're bringing home, for round numbers, $100,000 with tips and everything, but you're reporting $50,000 to the IRS, and that's you're paying tax on, that's all the bank is going to worry about is what your reportable income is each year. And they usually look at the past 2 to 3 years when you're looking to qualify for a home. And so I think that's one place to start, is making sure that you're reporting enough to be able to qualify for the home that you want to purchase. And then a good rule of thumb is that you want to try to put 20% down for your home purchase. You don't have to, but it is able to reduce the monthly payment and avoid PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. But that's not a complete must. But you also got to remember that when you're going for a home purchase, it's not just a down payment that you got to think about saving for. It's also the moving expenses, the furniture, other things, closing costs, other things that are come in that you don't really think about. Most people don't discuss. Then on top of that, you got to think about every single year, you're going to spend about at a minimum 1% of the value of your home just on general upkeep. And that's if things aren't going wrong, which they will. There's always something that's going to break, whether it be the fridge, the AC. And so you always want to make sure you're setting money aside. So that's not going to be something that sneaks up on you and puts you in a bad financial position.
Okay. I don't know if we said this earlier, but did we say this earlier? But I was speaking of sneaking up. Like I remember you told me that like 50% of Americans, did I say this? 50% of Americans, like if they had an unexpected $500 expense, like would have to use a credit card. Like
yeah,
a lot of us are in the same boat. Like
yeah, and it's the troubling statistic. I think the exact statistic was like 41% of Americans as a whole couldn't have under $1,000 emergency and not put it on a credit card. And so that's a big number of people that don't have it. And that's where we always go back to the start with the savings and being consistent and making sure you're putting money away every single month and paying yourself first so that then you're in a position where when something happens, and like we said, it always will, you're not going to further hamper yourself. And if you can't do 20%, you got to start somewhere. And some people get hung up, I can't do 20%, so I'm not going to know anything. Whatever the number is, like we said, meaningful but doable, and just start doing it and force it so it becomes automatic. Then eventually you say, all right, I can do more. And you start increasing it over time to make sure that you're always working and for yourself to get to the place you want to go.
Gotcha. Okay. Clear. Yeah, I love how I'm like spewing out these statistics like I'm some kind of professional. I am not, FYI. That's why Joseph is here. Okay, cool. I understand. Last question actually is that high interest savings account. What is that? How should I be using it? Is this like where my emergency fund should live, or? Yeah,
it's a great place for your emergency fund to live. There's a bunch online. There's not giving any crazy interest rates right now just because interest rates are so low. But if you can find a high yield savings account online, it's a great place to just store your emergency fund. So it's working for you some. It's not going to give you a bunch, but it's better than nothing. And then then you start having your other money work for you in the market in different places.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So that would maybe be a better option than like, your average bank usually doesn't have a high yield on interest. It's in your savings. It's just kind of sitting there, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, that's everything, but I did want to kind of recap, like if I was a bartender or a server or hospitality professional watching, what my takeaway I think would be, I mean, obviously everyone's different, is the emergency savings account, 3 to 6 months worth of savings, and jump in if I got anything wrong, but these are the notes I took, presumably it would be great if it was a high yield savings account. The 20-60-20 rule. So saved, I feel like I'm taking a pop quiz. Save 20%, 60% on your like must-have expenses, your car payment, your bills, your mortgage, and then 20% on discretionary spending, going to get a drink with a friend, going to movies, whatever. If you don't have access to a 401k, then Roth or traditional IRA could be a great option for you. Let's see. I loved the tip about the balance transfer to an interest-free card. I think that was like very pro, to try to pay that off without having the interest coming at you, and make yourself a budget. That's what I took away from this. So yeah, I mean, Joe, like, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I feel like, I do my reading and I try to do my best, but like, there's nothing beats talking to a profesh. So thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it. If anyone has any questions or needs to set up a consultation, we can have somebody from our team sit down with them and help them out.
And you're with Northwestern Mutual, right?
Yeah.
Well, this sucks because normally after this we'd go high five and drink a bottle of wine and eat a big steak, but I guess I'll just like go back to work.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Also from BCB side, thank you so much again, Emily and Joseph. I think this was an awesome session. I personally learned a lot, and I really hope that I can see you both very soon in person again.